Hey everybody, Josh here. How are you? I have some thoughts that I'd like to deliver to see what you think. Um, at the moment, there's an art conference going on, and people are speaking typically from the same political perspectives that I've had for a number of years, a few decades, and they're actually talking about the issues that God put on my heart as soon as I became a Christian. And these are Marxism and the corruption of the church and the the theft or the attempted swindle of Western culture and civilization by utopian ideologues. And the art conference, I think, is really good. Some of the rhetoric is a little utopian in itself. So I'm taking a watch and see approach of how this progresses. But the thing that was spoken about in a round table was, what do we do? What's the situation? How do we diagnose where we are? And the thing that was spoken of is the strangling by leftist religion ideology, the strangling of Western culture by the left, and I've always thought that the whole idea of sort of saying that things are either Marxist or Nazism has always been quite false to me, because my grandmother was kidnapped first by the communists who sent her and her father to Siberia for a year or two when she was a child, because that's what the communists did to re-educate people. Then after she got back, which is a miracle in itself that she survived, the Nazis invaded Poland and they kidnapped her and made her work in a work camp making ammunition and bombs and things like that. And the thing is, she wasn't a communist and she wasn't a Nazi. She was something in the middle. My evil cat is deciding to use this opportunity of weakness and distraction to get out, and I shall restrain it. I don't like cats. I ran into a guy in my endeavors of having coffee, and he was just a guy who walked past in kind of metal t-shirts and things like that, about my age, and I just saw him around, and he noticed on my laptop that I have a Megadeth sticker, and we started talking. Well, he asked me whether or not I was going to see Megadeth, or see some of the ex-band members of Megadeth play, and we've kind of struck up a really interesting friendship, which has been really nice. When you're in your 40s, new friends don't come along that often. But it's been really nice to talk with him, and we've even gotten into some pretty crazy subjects, politics and other things like that. And it's nice to have someone to talk to about some of these things who's not going to mock you or just straight out confront you and say you're wrong and have crazy sort of sort of want to argue with you all the time. It doesn't mean that we take everything that each other says as gospel, but we sort of recognize the rhyming of what we're interested in and how we're thinking. And having conversation helps us. I think it helps a lot of people, probably everybody, but I don't know. Um, Conversation usually helps people to think through their own position. So when you have a conversational partner who is just contrary at every level, um, that's not a helpful conversation. That's not going to help you think through anything. You need someone who's willing to move or be persuaded before you can really have a conversation with someone. If you're talking with someone who's immovable, um, bases their principles on ideological axioms, things that don't move, you're really not going to be having any sort of conversation with them. It's more like reading a textbook. The textbook's right all the time, and you have to do what it says. Or maybe it's like DVD instructions, or Blu-ray disc instructions, or some sort of instruction manual for some electronic device. That's designed to operate in a specific way, and you have to press the right button, and you have to turn it on this way, and it does these things, and it doesn't do anything that it's not designed to do. Society isn't like that. People aren't like that. They're not like machines. A sort of a rigid manual of how you're supposed to respond to everything, and how you're supposed to function, and what you're supposed to believe, and how you're supposed to behave. I mean, that's cultish. People don't like that. And that's kind of what it's like talking to people who think that way. It's like reading an instruction manual for something that you don't even want to use. So anyway, met this guy, and we hit it off over multiple conversations over many days. And it's all random. We don't organise to catch up. We just see each other and say g'day, which is great. It's lovely. It's really heart-filling, really. Anyway, he came out with something that really shocked me. He said he loves cats, and I hate cats. I can't stand cats, but he thinks they're amazing. Like when he says cats, he means lions, tigers, jaguars, leopards, everything, felines. And he attributes a bit of a supernatural element to cats, which, I don't. But my cat irritating me just reminded me of him saying how much he loves cats, which just came out of left field, because my perception of people who like metal is normally like, they like big dogs and German shepherds and pit bulls or terriers or whatever. So there's that. Another guy I had a conversation with at the cafe. He was worlds different. He was like he was like reading the instruction manual. He'd interrupt every time I said something that he didn't agree with. He wouldn't let me finish. He would interrupt and put a point of dispute, almost as if he can't let it go until I've finished and then address it. And I just literally, the conversation spanned 2 or 3 minutes, and I said to him, "Mate, you got to let me finish. You can't just interrupt all the time." And he's like, "No, why should you dictate the conversation? I don't believe that it." He said, "I don't believe that anybody should tell me how I should converse." And so I didn't really want to have the conversation in the first place. He sort of struck it up, and he wasn't. The cat again! Look at the cat. He's just deciding that I'm going to do the thing that Josh doesn't like and go up on the thing and eat the damn... Ah! You evil, evil thing. Oh, it drives me bananas. He got up on the bench and wanted to lick the juice from my lamb roast. And he knows that's wrong. And it's a constant battle with this darn cat. It's very strategic. And it seems that he does things that he knows I don't like as punishment for not allowing him to do things that he wants. I asked him once if he believed in Jesus. I looked straight into his eyes and I said, "Do you believe and obey and admit that Jesus Christ came in the flesh?" And he said nothing. He just looked at me and then walked away. Now, if that's not proof that cats are evil, I don't know what is. Anyway, yeah, I was talking to this guy, like reading the instruction manual, and I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and I did what I've never done before, which is I just switched off, put my headphones for my laptop back on, and I just continued because there is just no use. There's no use continuing to try and have a conversation with someone whose only interest is expressing their own thoughts. I mean, the Bible tells you about that. The fool only concerns themselves with wanting to express their own thoughts. That's not a direct quote, it's a paraphrase, but it's in Proverbs. And he was foolish because he didn't see that anyone else could possibly have any value in what they're saying if they don't agree with what he already thinks. He's never going to have a conversation where he learns anything if he keeps interjecting and stopping people from saying anything that he doesn't like or he doesn't already believe. Anyway, the art conference. Listening to John Anderson, Oz Guinness, and another lady who I apologize, I've forgotten her name, who grew up a Muslim but decided to change her beliefs. Anyway, the idea came across that Western culture is dying. That the ideas that so thrived and caused society to thrive and the West to put aside the warring factions of the late Middle Ages they went through so much pain with the wars of religion, with the post-Reformation killings and the papacy controversies and the Borgias, if that's right, if I'm saying that right, the popes that were just licentious and wicked, really. We've gone as the West, we've gone through all that pain, and what came out of it, and you see this in what was established in the American colonies, but also later on what was established in the Australian colonies, the British colonies in Australia, was a learning. It was a progression. We've had so much fighting and factionism and war that we decided to put away force and fighting and other things like that as a policy. And to start ideas and thinking about liberal ideas and freedom and, they would say liberty. Now, if you go back to Frederick Bastiat, who wrote in 1850, liberty is the freedom to use your skills, talents, and your faculties and to apply them in the pursuit of something that you, the individual, deem valuable for you and your family. Now, along with that comes the need to assume the risks of those choices, but also a freedom to enjoy the benefits without being stolen from by the government in what Bastiat calls legal plunder. Our word for it is tax. And, that it took about, I think Magna Carta was written in the 13th century, 13th century. And so it took 600 years for those thoughts to develop into Frederick Bastiat writing in 1850. He died young, about 40 years old, I think, which is a real shame because he was a brilliant thinker, brilliant economist. In his writing called The Law, which I maintain is the absolute best most elegant and concise answer to vanilla socialism that is in existence in the English language, which is kind of funny because he wrote it in French. So at the same time that he wrote this, The Law, his essay called The Law, another dude in England who was living off other people's dime, or pence, or shillings maybe, was writing his seminal work. That's a guy called Karl Marx. And he was taking the ideas of socialism and he was developing a mythology, if you read his early writings. He was developing a mythology that used these caricatures of people, groups, called the bourgeois, the owning class, the ruling class, and the proletariat, who are the people that don't have anything, don't own anything, they don't own the means of production, and they're being oppressed. And so while he was writing that mythology, people around the time were already, especially in France, were already sort of charged as this communal freedom. There were anarchist groups around, and socialism in France was pretty robust and being unhappy with the state. I mean, the French Revolution had just happened, 60 years before or 50 years before, where they just basically threw out what they thought was evil and elevated reason. And ironically, Robespierre, who was leading the Enlightenment, the revolution, or was given power in the revolution, just started killing people, just loads and loads of people. And he ended up being executed as well. And then it was out of that chaos that Napoleon Bonaparte rose to become, ironically, the emperor of France. It goes back to that idea that I had that evil destroys itself. When you have a totalitarian, authoritarian, or, some sort of rule by force, it can't last because it creates the environment for something in human nature to grow, and that's the desire for freedom, for liberty. And the thing is that authoritarianism kills things. It says the only thing that is allowed to exist are these robotic things that are axioms, and they're not allowed to change. They're not allowed to grow. They're not allowed to morph. We're not going to learn anything new and change our minds and give up power. We're going to hold on to power and we're going to keep going. But human beings are living spirits, living souls, living people. We change. We dream. And so in the current situation, where it looks quite dark, I have hope. Because the authoritarian push that the Marxists are on, and the globalists, the technocrats, ironically, a union between the secularists from the middle of the Romantic period, the 1850s, and the Marxists, the sort of the religious crazies, even though they said that we're not a religion, we're actually the true way of looking at the world, which is a very religious thing to say. The Marxists, through Lenin, really popularized it, but the Marxists have joined forces with the secular humanists who have turned into these technocrats, the experts rule, which you saw during the pandemic. They're all joining forces, ironically, with the ideological fascists as well. Because the difference between communism and fascism is just a couple of philosophers removed. They both sort of borrow on the idea of on the ideas of Hegel and Immanuel Kant, and Friedrich Nietzsche. They're related. Whereas the ideas of French liberalism and English political classical liberalism, with Locke and and the other guys that wrote from that perspective, um, they'd read Kant and they'd read Hegel, and they were like, this is rubbish. They're not related. So the idea that the left is critical Marxism or social justice or whatever, and the right is Nazism is just bananas. It's like there's the coin of fascism and communism over here, and then there's the coin of sort of a technocracy and a democratic liberalism on this side. And it's, what currency are you going to buy into? So the fascist communist thing is choking out Western civilization and those liberal thoughts so that they're dying. You might not even know who Frederick Bastiat is, which is a tragedy. And if it dies, maybe we might have to go through some of the pain of totalitarianism, of authoritarianism, of utter control over your life. We may have to go through that. But my hope is that because it doesn't grow anything, it doesn't allow anything to grow, everything dies under it. And so what happens when a plant is choked? If you've seen a tree choking on by being consumed by one of those vines that grow up and attach itself to it and seal its water, and a parasitic plant, the tree may die. But when growing things die, growing plants die, they drop seeds. And so maybe it might be true that the tradition that gave us Frederick Bastiat and John Locke and Voltaire and, the people that made such wonderful literature works as Chaucer and Shakespeare and actors like Laurence Olivier and Ronald Reagan, who became the president, obviously. The culture that gave us these people might be dying, but it's dropping seeds for individuals to pick up. And my hope is that a new plant will grow in the fertilized soil of the dead one. And it won't be consumed by the weed that is still feeding and attached to the dead plant. But how that's going to happen may mean that we go into a period of pain so that evil can destroy itself again. And the people that pick up those seeds, pick up a book of Frederick Bastiat, The Law, The State, The Seen and the Unseen, these books that he wrote. They might pick up Chaucer, they might pick up C.S. Lewis, they might pick up Tolkien and start to think about the things that are being written, the ideas that are being communicated, because those ideas give life. And maybe after a period of pain and death, life will grow again. I live in Australia. We have a lot of bushfires. And there are times when you go driving in the country, in the bush, and you pass through a patch that all the bark on the trees and the branches, they're blackened. But you see all this green, these eucalyptus trees, these, wattles and other native Australian plants that they survive the bushfire. The animals, koalas, wombats, they might die. But these plants that have deep roots, they know the winds that blow in Australia. They know that the fire is coming, and they've developed an ability to be able to survive. And what looks dead in the aftermath of a bushfire is really just dormant, waiting for the new life. Now, a lot of the times, the trees that die, they're dead, and they don't come back. But the seeds they drop in the ash-saturated soils, they're the new bush, they're the new forest, they're the new greenery. And it's a new thing. And that's what I'm hoping for. No matter how bleak it gets, I want you to remember that all of the dystopian novels, all of them, they all end with someone or the culture escaping and getting freedom. Because evil cannot sustain itself. It must have something that's living and active to be a parasite on. That's why good, given enough time, will always thrive. Truth will always come back and be real. There's only so much you can lie before people know that you're lying and they don't listen to you anymore. I hope you're encouraged. Like usual, I went way too long. And I'm just noticing now that my hair and my beard and everything looks like I am a bushman. But I've been working really hard on essays and things. Anyway, if it's your birthday, happy birthday. If it's not your birthday, happy birthday anyway. I'll see you later.